We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of Cash Flow Pro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. I'm here today with Eric Panecki of Leverage Capital. And we were talking a little bit before the show, and they are located in a crowded New Jersey, is what he was telling me. And we're ever so grateful for those folks up there, though, because they do bring a lot to the real estate market, and they bring a lot of real estate education, mostly because they have a lot of stuff going on. So, Eric, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Also going to introduce my partner, Veronique, who I kind of threw in last minute here just to, spice things up. But she's always a good, entertaining guest. So I figured two was better than one.
Yeah, absolutely. Veronique, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. When Eric says last minute, he says, come to my office. Let's do this thing. So
So he really means like last minute, like, hey, get this stuff down and let's go. Well, the thing is that if your business is like our business, it's basically like it's what we live, breathe, eat, sleep, the whole nine yards. So, doing these interviews and doing this stuff last minute, typically, at least for me, I'm hopefully like you all, is not very tough because, we were sitting there thinking about it anyway, right? So you might as well just get up and then go talk about it instead of just sitting there thinking about it. So, well, good. Well, welcome you all. I guess, Eric, let's start with you just a little bit and tell us a little bit about where you come from. And then Veronique, you can jump in, and then we'd like to hear a little bit about your backstory, and then we'll just kind of take it from there.
Yeah, perfect. First things first, appreciate you having us on. It's always a great opportunity when you get to speak to like-minded individuals, and clearly you have a great thing going on here. So we're happy to be a part of it.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you. Let's say that we're always glad to have you.
Soon, we just got started. We don't know how this thing's going to turn out, but my background is nothing super impressive. I've always been pretty entrepreneurial guy. From a young age, I was starting businesses, whether that was snow shoveling or selling lighters on eBay or concert tickets or whatever it was. Basically anything I could do to not get a job and make money.
So that's work for the man. That's right. That's what we call that. They don't want to work for the man.
Exactly. Went to school, West Virginia, for economics, and while I was there, the thing that always came to me was freedom, right? I got into real estate for the same reason I think a lot of people do, which is, being able to control my own destiny and not having to answer to someone at the end of the day. Going to work because I want to work, not because I have to work, has always been something that was super important for me and intriguing. And, when you start looking up, what's the best way to create financial freedom, you'd have to put blinders on to not see real estate come up. So, real estate, the old cliche is, 90% of millionaires made their wealth in real estate. So that's for me what got me interested initially. Started looking at different opportunities. I did the real estate agent thing. I went and started trying to sell houses. Clearly not for me. I did sell one house. I did. And I started working for a hedge fund, lending money to real estate investors, basically. And I was like, look, these guys are making a ton of cash, right?
Yes.
You start seeing the margins on these deals. And also I was a little green. I didn't see closing costs and realtor fees and holding costs and all that stuff. So I'm looking at gross profit. I'm seeing like $500K, $300K on a deal. I was like, these guys are killing it. Which they I'm sure they were, but not quite to that extent.
Yeah.
So, worked for the hedge fund for about 6 months. Bought my first house in in Montclair, New Jersey, which is a really nice area. Was in way over my head at like an 800K hard money loan with about like 16 grand in the bank at the time. Uh,
Yeah. Oh man.
so that was a fun story, and I could go on about that, but I don't want to take up the whole podcast. But yeah, and then we started flipping houses. We got into multifamily, started doing some wholesaling, and now we're pushing on 100 units on the acquisition side. Um, we've done a ton of transactions,
Now is
whether
that a hundred single families or multifamily duplexes?
multifamily, multi.
Multifamily. Okay.
They're mostly all like 5 to 10 unit
Okay.
apartment buildings. Yeah. Um, Came together with V. So V could definitely speak for herself. She was working for a developer in LA, and we started working on some loans together. And I was like, this girl's got it. And kind of one thing led to another. And I convinced her to come to beautiful New Jersey, all the way from LA. And we started the lending company about a year and a half ago, basically out of a need. So, again, V can speak for herself, but she was buying properties at the time. We saw a need in the multifamily mixed use space for a really strong bridge product, and that's been our investment thesis. We raised money around it, and basically that's our focus is lending money to real estate investors in that $1 to $10 million space for 5+ unit apartment complexes, value add, and mixed use buildings, and some new construction we do in there. But I don't want to completely cut you off, V. Why don't you give
Well,
a
real quick before we jump over and hear her story, you mentioned in there the word mixed use or the words mixed use, and I think that's kind of an asset class that's always
Mhm.
been there, and it's obvious. It's always been. Just look at like episodes of Friends years ago, where those were like at least had the feel of a mixed use, where you got coffee shop or something on the main level, and then you go up and it's residential. And I think that although mixed use buildings are very common where you all are at, I think that the rest of the world is just now starting to figure out just how valuable of an asset class they are,
Mhm.
because you're almost hedging one against the other. Commercial takes a dive, you've got the residential goes to crap, you've got the commercial. And so anyway, I just wanted to touch on that, and maybe we can talk a little and dive in a little bit further on some of your expertise or knowledge about mixed use after we hear Veronique's story.
Well, it's a great segue. I can't take any credit for the mixed use aspect of it. That was all V's doing. She's super passionate about mixed use. V, you could talk to why don't you talk about
Wow.
your
You super passionate about mixed use, is that what you said?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um that although I've never don't know that I've ever met anybody that's super passionate about mixed use, but let's go. I'm ready. Let's
It's
knock
in
it
her
out.
Instagram bio. That's how you know.
Yeah, for better or for worse, I usually go against the norm. So, you know,
Hey,
um,
that's where the profits are though, most of the time. The
Absolutely.
norm
yeah,
the norm gets you the if we were all the norm, we'd be working an 8 to 5 and leave it to beaver kind of stuff. So I got you. I'm with you. I love it. Let's go. So, all right, I won't cut you off again. Let's hear your story.
you're so good. Eric sells himself short, in my opinion. He, in my opinion, is the best at creating something out of nothing, way quicker than I've seen, a lot of people do in
Sure.
life. Um, so, hats off to him on in that scenario. I learn a ton from him every single day. In regards to my own story, it's not as straightforward as Eric's. I didn't always know I wanted to get into the finance, real estate side of things. I originally am from Poland. We moved over, when I was about 10 years old, and I am first generation here.
Okay.
So a lot of what I was taught and I grew up on is, freedom, but it's also, generational. Creating a better life, right? The American story, if you will, all
Yeah.
that good stuff. So grew up in New Jersey, and then I went to college in Charleston, South Carolina. I
Yep.
went to college for marine biology, believe it or not. Um,
Interesting.
wanted to swim with whales originally. And then after about a semester of that, I was like, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? I'm not going to live in the ocean. So I tried finding something else. I ended up graduating with a computer science degree. I did that for about a year out of college and absolutely hated it.
Yep.
And then on top of that, right, I had a ton of student loans, and I was like, I'm never going to pay these off, even with a great salary and this and that. So on the side, I got into and I started working for a private lender, just trying to get my foot in the door into real estate and understanding really, where to go from here. I did that for a little bit, and then I ended up getting a little bit of an insight into real estate development, which I think is extremely interesting because it's very tangible, right? You see it
Yeah.
come to life. And so I ended up moving out to California. I worked for a pretty large real estate developer out there where, I worked on, some magnificent projects, learned a ton between underwriting, development, everything. And after that, as Eric mentioned, we kind of came together, started working on a few side loans, and then it kind of grew organically from there. So we had to see where it goes.
Yeah.
And, the mixed use aspect really comes from my old boss. It's something that he invests and builds in a ton. And his thought process on it is something that really pulled me in. It helped me understand the reasoning behind it, the investment process. And so I kind of just have stuck with that ever since.
Cool deal. Well, I want to pick out a couple little things there. It's interesting because a lot of folks, the first thing they tell you in marketing when you step into marketing is, or if you're, when you finally get your niche, so whatever you want to call it down, and they tell you to create an avatar, right? And I firmly believe that there's like three main avatars for people that are trying to raise capital for any type of thing, and I feel like um, biologists is one of the very top, mostly because it's a very systematic mindset, and from this standpoint, at least where I'm at, like everything is systematized. Everything from the podcast all the way through to the raising capital, from filling out of a form online all the way through, so there's engineers. In my opinion, there's engineers, biologists, and then doctors fall somewhere between the two, if you will. But it's a very systematized when you're looking at investing or capital raising from the retail side. I guess that's just something that jumped out to me. It was interesting when you said that. Now, the mixed use stuff is still obviously that's on my mind, but I would like to get maybe a little bit on so you were working for a developer, and then we can kind of go into a little bit about like what made you think that this route was better than what you were doing.
What made me think it was better? I think I'm a big believer in opportunity.
Yeah.
I think if, personally, I'm a believer in it doesn't really just, drop at the doorstep. You have to really, whether it's habits or actions, really be consistent about it and
Yeah.
create them by yourself sometimes. And so, the job for that developer, I mean, I networked between people for about 2-3 months, and he, was hiring somebody else. And I had a gut feeling with him where, he said he wasn't hiring at this point in time, this and that. And I said, look, can I just have 5 minutes of your time, friendly phone call? And I said to him, like, I just know I want to work for you. And so what I asked him is, I'll work for free for 3 months. I
Oh,
want to
wow.
learn from you.
Yeah.
I know everything that's in your brain. You've done it. You've been successful. You've been doing it for a long time. I will work for free for 3 months. If you don't want to hire me after that, no hard feelings. We can part ways, all that good stuff. And for me, it's just creating your own opportunity and really sometimes taking the big risk
Yeah.
and not maybe making as much in the short term, but obviously paying off in the long term. And so I think same thing here with the situation with Eric, right? Same thing here. It's, I was giving something up that I thoroughly and I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity and the things that I was able to do and learn.
Yep.
But just an opportunity that we created that I just could not give up.
Yeah.
Had to try it out.
Sure. Well, that's awesome. So, so as far as like, let's chat again. We're still going to go back to the mixed use because that's, I think, it's so important right now from a lot of different perspectives. And I think there again, but so let's talk about leverage capital, the business itself. And maybe you mentioned this earlier and I could have possibly missed it, but I'd like to, if you did, I'd like to reiterate it for the listeners, but what, let's, from a delegation of responsibilities. Eric, you do what? And I guess it's okay to call you V, Veronique, V, whatever. What are you specifically responsible for as far as like day to day stuff? Because I think this is an interesting spot as well. Because a lot of times we have individual listener or we have individual guests on the show. Very rarely do we have a chance to peek into a partnership, which I'm assuming is not you're not married or anything like that, correct? I mean, obviously you have different last names, so this is just purely a business platonic relationship, so on, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. I mean, that's fine. I just want to make sure we're not talking like husband wife stuff. Like I can't stand the way he puts the cup in the sink
We
and
still
I
got that. Our adjustment. It's a marriage, but we're not married.
but not okay, cool. No, I get that for sure. And most partnerships are, and that's important for a lot of people out there listening to remember as well. You jump into a partnership, you better know what you're doing. You better have a good idea what parameters there are. So, all right. So give us a little bit of an idea of what the delegation of responsibilities looks like on a day to day.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I can speak on that. I mean, so it's not as simple as front office, back office, but it's a lot like that. From a day to day perspective, obviously we're both working together to grow the business, but I spend a lot more time on the sales side, client facing, going out raising money, managing the employees. A lot of the time I'm managing, trying to motivate the employees. So on the, I spend a lot of time on the front end, more focused on growth. Definitely, I'm more. I don't want to say risk advert. I enjoy risk, honestly.
Thrives.
I like risk
I do
just
too.
because I feel like even in the worst case scenario that we'll figure it out.
Yep.
And it's a lot of checks and balances. So on the back end, V spends a lot of her time, mitigating risk,
Yep.
making the business run like an actual business. If I add a bunch of fuel to the fire, she's going and taming that fire and making sure that it, grows in a smooth, even direction. And, from a system, you said, biologists are very systems oriented. And I see that with V. There's times where it's just like, wow, you did that just way better than I could have ever done. So, I mean, you could speak more on that, but, from a delegation of responsibility, it's, I'm definitely more of the,
Well, and I also would like to point out from a partnership standpoint, which the partnerships that I've been involved in as well, it's not an exclusive. Like the fact of the matter is if you were sick one day and you had an important meeting coming up, it's not like she couldn't step in and help or take over. I guess again, I'm just and that's where I think a lot of partnerships fail because you go in and you're like, you don't want her stepping into your territory saying, I'm taking care of the sales. I'm over here doing sales. You stay over there, which I think a lot of times that's where partnerships fail when one partner can't overlap into the other partner's responsibilities or willingness to overlap into the other partner's responsibilities. And I think the most successful partnerships that you see is where kind of all of the oil in the water ends up equal, where both parties are putting effort regardless of what that effort is on that day. But anyway, so V, tell us a little bit about your daily responsibilities. Like how do you keep that, because I'm the gas pourer as well in our deal, so I completely get that. I've got, a matter of fact, I've got more than just one person that tries to go in and put it down and tell so anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, even to that point, right? Without people with personalities and instincts to really pour the gas, right, if you will, there wouldn't be a need, to organize and systemize and pour water on something, right, if it wasn't for you,
Correct.
right? So, I personally think everybody plays their role. I think the biggest thing in a partnership is, and I actually heard somebody say this in a different way in one of our meetings yesterday, is really to be interchangeable to a very large extent, right? We're not the same person, but we do, own the business together. If I'm, you know, out sick for a week, which rarely happens, I know for a fact that Eric can handle it and the business, will keep running, right?
Yeah.
If I'm away
I
on
have an insurance quote that says you getting sick is not that rare of an occurrence.
give or take. Um,
You
but
got an insurance quote. Wait a minute. No, I know. Yeah.
Our policy got jacked up this year. Would you get COVID 5 times? How many times?
4 actually, yeah.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. I had it
Yeah.
once and that was enough for me. I had it one verifiable time anyway.
Yeah. But, even in that scenario, right? The first 2 times I was like kind of, the other 2 I was actually fully out of commission. You know, I handle a lot of the underwriting, the processing, systems, servicing, the fun admin stuff. Making sure everything runs smoothly. Experience on all sides, whether it's an investor, one of our clients as a developer, whatever it may be, right? Ultimately, it's relationships, right? So I
Sure.
just make sure that relationship that, whether it's Eric bringing it in or one of our salespeople, that relationship is maintained in a healthy way, I
Yep.
guess.
Sure.
And so I really do focus on that. But in terms of a partnership, if I'm out or I'm unavailable, right, everybody that works for us or, is our client or investor, they can kind of treat us interchangeably, which I think is really, really good.
That's very important. And I'll tell you, at least my business experiences, it's rare to see uh, uh, a partnership like what you all have, especially where it's where it's interchangeable. And I guess I said that earlier, not knowing that was where that was really what you all felt was a big point of your business. But when you can swap in and out and make the same a lot of times the decision making is where there gets to be rifts too, because if she makes a decision while you're out and then you come in and you're critical, no matter what you're critical about, you could have been critical about the way what time the phone call happened, who knows, but if you're critical, then that tends to just starts the process of building animosity that ultimately someday is going to explode.
Yep.
And the other part of this rare breed of what we're talking about here is the idea that the majority of us as capital raisers, as fund managers, as property owners, whatever the case is, we're a lot exactly like what you said early on, Eric. I don't like working for the man. So
Right.
that first of all puts us almost in an explosive type of personality to begin with,
Yep.
because we kind of have a middle finger at
The
the
world.
norm world, while we're off being, I don't want to say rebels, because that's not necessarily what it is, but I just say, so to be able to have somebody that recognizes that's just who you are, and her job to tame that and yet keep everything in order is super important. So, all right, now with that being said, I want to jump back to mixed use. I want to jump back and talk a little bit about that, because you had you V, you specifically said that the gentleman you worked for in, was it LA, right? That was kind of his maybe specialty. Did I catch that right? Or
Yeah,
he had a high knowledge about what was going on there?
yeah, and he did have some, other commercial properties, right? So they weren't all mixed use, but a
Okay.
lot of his projects were. Um, I think there's 2 ways to look at it, right? And I'm a big personal advocate of um, health also. Eric is as well. I think the mixed use aspect, depending on, what size of a project you're talking
Oh,
about.
it's got to very much be a property specific scenario. I mean, I just don't think you can be like, oh, I see mixed use everywhere here. I think
Yeah,
Right.
it's definitely location
exactly.
multiplied by everything else.
Yeah, and even to that point, right? The big thing is, whether you're talking about, I don't know, 25 units versus, I don't know, 3,000, right? I think it opens up the door to create really well-rounded communities, right? I went to school in Charleston, for example. It's a small downtown. You can walk everywhere. You don't have to drive, right? Where in comparison to, LA, you do have to drive mostly everywhere. But
Yeah.
in a community sense, right? Santa Monica, take for example, right? There's tons of mixed use properties there. And it creates, a community, an environment where, you can do things with friends. I think it creates a better lifestyle, which ultimately I think, from a owner perspective is great, right? And
Yeah.
also from, a renter's perspective is great, right? Because you live in the residential units and you can have a few friends down the block. You can walk to go get food or go do yoga or whatever it is, right? Because the retail spaces at the bottom provide that opportunity. So
Yeah.
I think it creates something larger than necessarily just obviously returns and a good asset and you know offsetting the risk on the residential or commercial side. I think it from like a larger picture, I think it creates a better lifestyle.
Man, and now I couldn't agree more. And I think again it's very location specific. And I'd like to know a little bit more, I guess. Now, the underwriting using present day figures is usually not necessarily what I think about when I think mixed use. I think about IRRs because, in my opinion, a mixed use property, you're looking at like what, maybe 5 years out or 10 years. And then adjusting. So basically, you're almost having to underwrite two different property classes, right? And two different streams of income and then combine it in a similar underwriting type fashion. And again, now it's not going to be I guess it doesn't turn into be entirely different than an apartment complex that then has multiple other income facets to it, like covered parking or maybe fitness center or maybe pool or whatever. So, but specifically, what are some of the things that you look for? Like if somebody calls you and says, "Hey, I got a nice mixed use property, I'll sell you." Uh, Currently, the commercial spot's vacant, but the all the apartments above are rented. Like, what are some things that you start looking for when you begin to underwrite and look at the potential for that?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. Location, right, is huge. So if you're gonna look at anything mixed use, you want to make sure that the area supports it, right?
Yeah,
Um, our office is in downtown Newark. There's more vacant retail space here than I can imagine anywhere. And every day I drive through, I'm what even would you put here? So as the city comes back, becomes more viable, but and then to V's point, if you go to downtown Santa Monica, you'll get top dollar for that retail space. So I think location is huge if it can support the retail space, and then you have to your vacancy assumptions. I think take a drastic change, at least for the retail spot. You're not generally not a 5% vacancy assumption isn't really realistic. But if you do have on the flip side of that, if you do have a long term tenant in place, you could basically you don't have to calculate any vacancy because if they got a 5 year lease and
yeah. That value, that lease, definitely comes into play more on that commercial than it does the residential side, I
right,
guess.
right. So we like even uh, what's cool about even smaller mixed use buildings is that if you have a three apartments with one retail space, technically you could still get FHA financing on that, but you could underrate it based on a commercial valuation,
Sure.
which which poses a pretty cool scenario. Like you can't go and get a commercial valuation on a 4-family, but you can do it on a 3 apartments plus 1 retail. But
Sure.
your end buyer could be the same. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of different ways to look at it, I think.
Well, the one thing that just clicked in my mind as you were sitting here talking about that, and I got to ask, the commercial portion of a mixed use building is not like there's no rent control on the commercial portion, although there might be on the residential portion. So to me, it gives you a little bit of a hedge if the like just for instance the climate we're in right now, inflation kicks in, price of whatever goes, what price of a croissant, you got a croissant shop, croissants
Yeah.
goes way up,
Mhm.
your rent can theoretically rise with that while the rent control standards stay in place for the above, right?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up what I think is a really good point. We just got back from one of the biggest industrial conferences in New Jersey, and what's one of the most surprising factors that I learned. The underwriting has shifted where long-term leases are now viewed as a bad thing. Um,
Well,
so
their liability
yeah,
from
because
they're
it,
viewed as a bad thing from the ownership
yeah,
standpoint.
yeah, exactly. So previously, you wanted long-term leases in place, but now with the market shift, you know, uh, rent increases are outpacing inflation. So if you have long-term leases in place, it's not allowing you to.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that makes sense. Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the Cash Flow Pro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must-Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making Cash Flow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show.
So I thought that was really interesting that nobody wants to buy buildings that have 5-year leases in place because
Well, it's kind of like having the hedge on the corn crop that now the price is twice what it was when you hedged it, and now you're somebody's sucking air up top.
yeah,
I mean, it's one of those things that when as commercial ownership steps in, you don't think about, you're basically thinking about it today and maybe next week or next month specifically, but as inflation kicks in like it has, now all of a sudden you're going, I
yep.
hedged this too soon, but you can't really do anything about it. You just don't have to make a margin call every day, I guess.
The corn crop analogy is very Kentucky of you, Casey.
It is. That's the hillbilly. That's the hillbilly part. Yeah, that's where it come from. So,
Uh,
well, listen, it's been an interesting discussion, to say the least. I think that it definitely bears possibly revisiting at least down the road as you all grow and as our listeners respond to maybe some questions and things that we've got here. But so a couple of questions. So I'm sorry. I just get intrigued at some of these different takes on things when we start interviewing across the country, and the way that different locations have different specificities of what their market handles, what they don't handle. Like there's like two mixed use buildings where I'm sitting. There's like two mixed use buildings within like 100-mile radius of where I'm sitting right now,
right.
and they're both right up the road here. And so I'm just like, that's what so again, that's me, and I think the listenership, again, like I said, across the nation, mixed use stuff is not just super. It's hot right now, don't get me wrong, but it's not super. People don't have a lot of knowledge about it. So, all right. So here we're going to end the episode with a couple of different questions. There's no right or wrong answer, but I usually ask one person these questions, but I would like an answer from both of you, and I'm sure they're going to be different. But if I could ask the question, Eric, you go first, V, you go second, and then the second question, same. So Eric, what is the best book that you have read or are reading?
Best book that I've read. I revisited How to Win Friends and Influence People. I
Sure.
read it, I don't know, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like a classic, right? But sometimes it's just good to have a refresher, right? Especially when you manage a lot of employees. I don't know if it's a lot, but we have about 20, 25 employees at this
Sure.
point.
Sure.
Um, and you have to hold yourself to a higher standard and make sure that you're being the example for everyone else. So for me, that one, it's an old classic. My favorite book of all time is Shoe Dog. It's Phil Knight Nike
My
story.
that's in my top 5 every time. I
It's amazing.
always I
Amazing.
love that. I love the whole waffle iron and the
Yeah,
whole selling out of the trunk of the car because, dude, I mean, that's like where a lot of us. I mean, I wasn't
yeah,
a briefcase toter, but I wasn't far for the only reason I wasn't a briefcase toter is because they weren't cool when I got to that stage of my life.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so, but yeah. So, all right. So V, what's the best book you're currently reading or have read or?
Just one, only one.
Well, I did too.
Oh, you did
10, 20, I
Okay.
don't care. What we got time, whatever.
I'm a big, and I was looking at it last night, which is why I'm going to pick that one. I'm a big fan of Principles by Ray Dalio.
Yep.
Kind of what Eric mentioned, right? As we're growing and we're having growing pains and just in general about business and somebody who's really grown something, enormous, right?
Yes,
Of great
absolutely.
value.
And he's
Uh,
done it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, I think the best thing is to really learn from people who have already been there before you. And so I always just kind of check in on that one, get some new highlights, those kinds of things. So I'm a big fan of
Yep.
that one. And I'm hitting empty on the title, Sam Zell book. What's it called? I know you know it.
Sam Zell, forget.
It's by Sam Zell.
It's like, am I being too
Subtle?
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I being too subtle? And
Am I
actually,
being too subtle?
yeah. And Eric actually gave me the book. It's a very quick read. It's great. It's very entertaining. And it kind of, for me, what it did was just help me see things a little bit differently. So,
Sure.
I highly
Well, and
recommend
that's the same with any business. If you can take a different perspective on it, I mean, it's always good to throw that gas on the fire, right, Eric?
Yeah, throw that gas. I mean, for me,
I'll pour the water.
she'll pour the
That's
water. I mean, I love books just about people that did it. So one of the best ones is about the Sam Walton, and we're similar in that sense. We love to read books about other people that have grown
yeah,
really awesome
yeah.
things.
The Waltons just bought my favorite football team.
Broncos, baby.
Yes, sir. They sure did. They
That's
sure
crazy.
did. That's my
Yep.
team.
Yep.
So yeah, by the time this episode airs, I'm sure it'll be pretty
Official.
well a done deal. But anyhow, so all right. So Eric, what is a dream vacation you have either taken or hope to take?
This is a great question
Dream
for me.
vacation. Yeah, this is a V question if I ever heard one.
Totally.
I'm going to Mykonos in Greece at the end of the month.
Yeah.
So that should be pretty cool.
Jeez, yeah, that's definitely on top of my list. Mykonos, specifically Mykonos. I just think that's a whole. I like me personally. I like immersing myself in culture.
Yeah.
Way more than I do sites and stuff like that. I just like culture stuff.
Yep. Yeah. For me, I got thrown into that one kind of last minute, but dream vacation would be. I always like the idea of just going on an adventure somewhere in the mountains of some country where you kind of have to rough it and figure it out and speak to the people, and you rent a beat up car that's stick shift because they don't have automatic, and like that kind of thing.
Shoot, yeah.
I would love to just kind of disconnect for like a month and go on an adventure. But given where the business is at, doesn't seem like it's on the short term horizon. But at some point, we'll get there.
Yeah, that whole disconnecting part is what's so difficult.
Yeah.
I don't think finding that place is all that hard, or even getting there is all that hard. But I always thought it'd be cool. Like I'm trying to think of the country that's west of Madagascar. It's Madagascar is the island, and it's right direct like somewhere
Country?
like where.
Tanzania?
Yeah, like Tanzania, that whole where like you just like you get out and these people are like, I don't know. I would probably end up getting killed because I'd be in the wrong place. But
She's a world traveler, so she's been everywhere. So she got
yeah. So all right, same question, V. What's a dream vacation you've either taken or hope to take?
I am very fortunate. I have traveled a ton, and I'm a big believer in it. I think it gives you a ton of perspective
Oh,
on
absolutely.
the world, and I think it's worth every ounce of time and every penny you got. Personally, that being said, I have been to like 62 countries.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. Good
so
Lord.
She goes like 62, like maybe.
my dream vacation is traveling the world for a year and seeing all 196 of them.
Interesting. That's a pretty big feat
Yeah.
because there's some that you might stand on one side, put your toe over, and say, "All right, let's go."
You're
I've
probably
been there.
not wrong. I've been to a few, I've been to countries where, not a lot of people choose to go, like Myanmar, for example, is one, right? Some people, don't even know that it is a country, right?
Very much, yes.
So, I think there's always something to be learned, even if that's the case. You just got to take the right precautions.
Well, one of the things that Airbnb has is you can rent a tent, like rustic stays and stuff like that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that'd be cool. Then my wife's like, she's like, oh, I could do that. I would do that with you. Like, let's talk about that. And then we go to Italy for a week, and she's like in the room because she's like, oh my god, I'm so tired. I can't. And I'm like, really? You could do this? I mean, we have all the amenities of life, and you're saying you could go stay in a tent with me in Tanzania? No.
Right.
I was like, I'm going by myself. You stay, you stay home. The kids
Uh,
need you. So, all right. Well, listen, I'll let you all both answer this question however you want. If somebody heard something today that resonated with them, they like your take on a few different things, or maybe they just have some questions. What is the best way for the audience to possibly reach out and get in touch with you?
yeah. I'm pretty big. We're both actually pretty big on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So Eric Panecki, you can look me up. Definitely reach out on there. Instagram is my name. You could search me there. We're going out. We're really focused on the multifamily bridge space. We're super competitive on those loan products, like 1 to 10 million. We're doing a ton of loan volume. So if there's any way we could help anyone in your audience in that aspect, we're also going out raising money for our fund. If that's interesting to anybody, but yeah, I mean, we're an open book. If there's any way we could help, grassroots, like I said, grew this company from nothing to we got 25 employees and 100 units, and we're doing about 15 million in loan volume. So if there's any way we can help somebody scale their business or help them grow, or lessons learned, don't do it the hard way. Learn from smarter people. Trust me, it's way easier.
Yeah, most definitely. And
It-
that's where a
it-
lot of entrepreneurs fail or think they're entrepreneurs. They fail. They're too bullheaded. They don't want to listen. They don't.
they don't want to ask for help. Yeah, I
That's
mean,
right. Or ask for help. Yeah.
yeah, I subscribe to the squeaky wheel strategy. Squeaky wheel gets the lube, right? You got to ask for help. I'm big on it as long as it's not,
I think one of the biggest humbling things for me was the day I finally decided to join a mastermind
yeah,
and obtain a mentor, a paid mentor at that. I mean, people are like, well, it should be, you should have to, but I mean, everybody, the thing is that if you don't invest in it, you won't take anything from it.
yeah,
And I think that's a double-edged sword, because it seems like a way for the marketer who's marketing the mastermind to make money, but at the same time, it also gives you a reason. So,
yep.
but how can they reach out and get in touch with you?
Eric Panecki on LinkedIn.
Okay, cool.
Search
Cool.
me is really good. It's Eric at levcapfunding.com is my email, and then Eric Panecki on any of those platforms. You can search me up. If you Google my name, I'll probably come up. You can find me.
Cool, man. Good. And we'll put all that in the show notes, information, whatever information you shared there, we'll put in the show notes. But listen, hey guys, thank you all for coming
Cool.
today. Yeah,
V,
V, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Same thing, right? You can find me on LinkedIn. Email is vhut@levcapfunding.com. Email is probably the best for me, but either one works, and we'll circle
Cool.
back.
V's a good testament. She's doing a lot of stuff with women in entrepreneurship, and she's a really good role model for a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs. Real estate's male dominated, so it's tough.
Well, I'll tell you, and I know that the hillbilly beard, really awesome look that I carry probably sells me as some masculine god, which I tend to be in some circles.
Yeah,
But
yep.
I have two daughters, and two of my five kids are daughters, And I'm constantly trying to find ways, because I know we're going a little further here than what we had anticipated, but I wasn't anticipating that comment from you, Eric, because I think there's nothing in this world that infuriates me as a father any more than hearing one of my daughters say, only boys can do that, or I can't do that, Daddy, I'm a girl. And
Right.
I'm like, all right, maybe you can't put on shoulder pads and a helmet and take a hit. You could, obviously,
Yeah.
but what I'm getting at is that in the entrepreneurial space, there is just as much room for women as there is men. There's just as much room for every color of everybody. There's just as much room for it's a mindset. And that's what I try to tell them. And that's what I try to instill in my girls is that no, only boy, you can't not do that because you're a girl. Maybe you can't do that because you don't want to, or you don't feel like you have the edge. Maybe you feel like you need to learn more about it before you do it. But the reason you can't do that is not because of your gender. So,
Yeah. I mean, V's pretty humble about it, but she'll, I think she won't speak for herself, but using that to your advantage, I think, and taking that negative and using it as a positive, and I think she does a really awesome job at it, and I know it's inspired other people out there. So I'd be doing
yeah.
a disservice if I didn't at least mention it.
Well, wonderful. And I actually had a lady on the show a couple weeks ago, and I get all red faced talking about it because I'm just like, it makes me mad that that they have that take at 12 and 10
Right.
or 11
Right.
and 9. I can't remember how old they are. I love them to death, but I can't never remember how old they are. It's like it's always changing when you got 5 of them. So, but anyway, well, listen, guys, thank you all for being on the show today. I know it's oftentimes hard to within busy schedules, especially to get everybody on here at once. So I do appreciate you all being here, and I want to thank you. And listeners, if you like something what you heard today, reach out to Eric or Veronique, which is a beautiful name too, by the way. Sorry, I had to say that, but reach out and get in touch with them if you heard something you want more information on, or you have something that resonated with you. Also, if you could give us a 5-star review if you like what you're listening to and you want for us to continue and be boosted in every way so we can spread our message and help people raise capital, learn the real estate business, and further educate their financial goals. So thank you all, and I appreciate everybody's time today.
Cashflow Pro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.